interesting to look at, aren't they? You know, I was thinking to myself that maybe some of us might be feeling like we're experiencing very much the same quality of life that these guys are here, sort of like we're trapped in our own little world due to this quarantine and whatnot. During these times, it's important to keep your brain occupied by doing something that you enjoy, like a hobby. And for me, this is one of my hobbies, maintaining tropical aquariums. As a matter of fact, I have 3 of them now. 1, 2, 3. Now, I'll confess something to you. Keeping aquariums is actually a new hobby of mine. That's right, up until about a year ago, I didn't know anything about tropical fish, aquatic plants, filters, substrates, pH levels, and every other thing that goes with aquariums. I had to learn, and the experience that I had learning about all that stuff was no different than the experience that you, as an English language arts student, would have if I asked you to do research on an informative essay. I had to look for the best information, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Understanding the difference between any old information and the best information possible from a reputable source. When doing research online, it's important to consider a few things, like domain extensions. Domain extensions are those letters you see at the end of a website. For instance, like .com, used by commercial businesses. .net, often used by networks, or .org, used by nonprofit organizations. These 3 domain extensions are widely used, and the truth is that just about anybody can use any one of these domain extensions. We also have .edu, used by colleges and universities, or .gov, utilized by government institutions. You can also figure out where a website comes from in the world by its domain extension. .us would be United States, .uk, United Kingdom, .cn, China, .eu, European Union, and .ru, Russia. Let's go back to these previous 2 for just a second. Oftentimes, some would say that these 2 domain extensions typically tell you that a website is more trustworthy because it's run by a school or a government organization. But there's a couple of big questions that we should ask ourselves. Are there other ways in which I can tell if I can trust a website besides its domain extension? And the answer to that question is yes. And here's what I should consider if I'm doing research. First of all, has the website been published or updated recently? If we want the most up-to-date information, then certainly we should check to see if the website has been updated recently. Or, have you heard about it or them? I'd venture to guess that most of us have probably heard of PetSmart. Can we trust it? I'd say that's a surefire guarantee. Let's go inside and see what we can find. I do assume that most of us have heard of PetSmart at this point, a worldwide retailer of all things pet, including tropical aquariums, a trusted resource, As a matter of fact, if I was to do an internet search right now on Google, the first search that I find is actually from PetSmart.com, aquarium water care for healthy fish tanks. Now, of course, I already have my tanks set up, so for the demonstration part of this video, I'm certainly not going to be setting up a fourth aquarium, because if I did, I'd probably be pulling my hair out at some point having to maintain 4 aquariums. But what I will be doing is I will be following this exact web search we did to conduct maintenance on my aquarium, and I'm going to show you exactly how it's done. Take a look. And with a simple flip of the switch, the new water goes in. So how do we put this process into practice? Well, it's important to give credit where credit is due, and I certainly have to give PetSmart credit for helping me learn how to maintain my aquariums. But what if I were an English language arts student and I were tasked with writing an informative essay on this process? I would still have to give credit where credit is due. And there's a couple of different ways of doing that. One of which would be a properly framed direct quote, which I know that you already know how to do, so we'll go ahead and move on. Huh? What? Oh, you don't remember the 3 parts of a properly framed direct quote?
No.
Well, that's okay. Why don't we review them? How to frame a direct quote. If you recall, there are 3 parts to a properly framed direct quote. The first would be an introduction. For example, something like, according to the text. You would also have the exact quote, or sometimes they're called borrowed words, in quotation marks. And finally, the source, like the author's last name or title, and the page or paragraph number. Let's try to create our own properly framed direct quote from the article in question. Let's say, for instance, that I wanted to take this sentence and use it in a direct quote. I would copy it, bring it to my document here, and choose an introduction. Believe me, there are many, many different options. In this case, I'm going to choose to say, according to the article, comma. Then I'm going to insert my borrowed words. Oh, I almost forgot. They have to be inside quotation marks. Lastly, I'm going to insert the source. In this case, my source would be PetSmart. Now, sometimes when you're doing research on the internet, you're not necessarily going to find a page number, so you're going to have to use the paragraph number instead. In this case, since this is the very first paragraph of the article, I'm going to put paragraph 1. And there we have a simple, properly framed, direct quote. Well, folks, there it is. That's my hobby, keeping aquariums. But now I'd like to hear about your hobby. So what I want you to do is very simple. Write a paragraph. Tell me about your hobby, something you love to do. Do some research on it. See if you can find a good source, something you can trust. Think about those domain names. And just tell me about your hobby. 5 to 6 sentences. Don't worry about length. Just make it simple. Now is not the time to stress. I would like you to do it though. And when you do it, send it to lprice@chusd.org, or feel free to give it to any one of your teachers to read as well. But I do want you to make sure you get it done, because if you don't, I'm going to feed you to this guy in here, and he does get very hungry. He especially likes to eat middle school students. That's all I have for you guys. Thanks so much.